Hello and welcome. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Kukumlimle on digital address GA0992539. Our top stories this hour. WHO concerned about the preparedness of many African countries to undertake successful COVID-19 vaccination once the vaccine is rolled out here. Details as Ghana's COVID-19 active cases near 1,000. And the Ghana Medical Association raises concern and Parliament prepares to test MPs again for COVID-19. In Parliament has passed today the first ever private members' bill to introduce more severe sanctions against road traffic offenders. This is the first time in Ghana's history that its parliament is passing into law a bill not at the behest of the executive arm of government. We'll understand what it means as the House prepares to go on break next week. In this afternoon, we ask, will citizens in the yet-to-be-created Guan constituency get representation in Parliament? We'll be finding out from the EC what steps they're taking. Meanwhile, the NDC wants the issue resolved before a new Parliament is sworn in. Also coming up, police CID says it is still conducting investigations to unravel persons behind the shooting to death of 2 people at the Techiman South Collation Center. We'll bring you details of a news conference addressed by Director General of the CID, COP Isaac Kenyebwa. The Pulse is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. I'm Gifty Andopia. Join us on DSTV 421, GoTV 144. Remember, we're streaming live on YouTube and our other social media handles. Now, the Criminal Investigations Department says it is still conducting investigations to unravel the persons behind the shooting to death of 2 people at the Techiman South Collation Center. At a press conference on violence during election 2020, Director General of the CID, COP Isaac Kenyebwa, said 8 persons were injured after some people he calls NDC supporters started attacking people who were gathered there for the coalition.
8 male adults were injured in the process. Police called the National Ambulance Team, which was standing by the center, and the victims were rushed to Holy Family Hospital for treatment. However, Abdallah Ayarek and Tajuddin Muhammad were pronounced dead on arrival. But our investigation so far revealed that whilst the electoral officials were collating the results at about 1540 hours, the results were projected as follows: 49,582 for the MPP parliamentary candidate, 49,205 for the MDC parliamentary candidate. Supporters of the NDC who had gathered outside the hall became angry and started attacking the center with stones and other offensive weapons. They broke the cordoned zone and forced their way into the coalition center. And that was when the shot was fired from the crowd, and the police personnel detailed to safeguard the center also gave warning shots. And then after the rioters had left the place, 8 male adults were injured. I must say that the police are still investigating to find out who actually committed the offense.
COP Isaac Kenyebwa also revealed that a soldier involved in the shooting to death of a man in his 30s, Ibrahim Abbas, who died yesterday after sustaining gunshot wounds in the Osu Central constituency, has yet to be identified and arrested.
The earlier shooting, in which a military officer was also involved but has not yet been identified, the victim, Abbas Ibrahim, who was on admission at Kolebu Teaching Hospital, unfortunately died on the 16th of December 2020. Postmortem examination had been performed and the body released to the family. Investigation is ongoing to get the security officer who actually committed the offense to face the law.
As the CID Director General, he's also been speaking about a fake lawyer who has been arrested for, according to the police, representing some suspects in the Western Togoland case since September. He also says investigations are underway to find and arrest some persons involved in the shooting to death of a 12-year-old girl in Savelugu as they celebrated the victory of the NDC there.
To talk about is the fake lawyer. As you are all aware, there is this Western Togoland secessionist group case which is pending before court. And a gentleman, Dennis Seiram Benson, who has been parading himself as a lawyer for some of the accused persons, was yesterday arrested at the Carnation District Court when he appeared for his client. Prior to his arrest yesterday, he had even gone to the extent of asking for bail for some of his clients. And yesterday, he was arrested because of his demeanor in court. And so it turned out that this gentleman is not a lawyer by profession, but he has been carrying himself as a lawyer, and we are still investigating him. He's 42 years old, and he's presently in the custody of the police. 8th of December at about 21:30 hours, a 12-year-old girl identified as Zakaria Samira and 3 others were shot by an unidentified gunman at Savelugu. The deceased was rushed to Savelugu Municipal Hospital but died shortly on arrival. However, the 3 others with multiple gunshots were admitted and are receiving treatment at the Savelugu Municipal Hospital. The victims were among jubilant supporters of the NDC at the NDC party office at Savelugu. On the 9th of December, at about 16 hours, the Northern Regional Police Command, in conjunction with the military, arrested suspect Duku Na Muhammad Ahmed. He is the chief of Duku in Savelugu, with 1 AK-47 rifle with 2 magazines loaded with 40 rounds of ammunition, 21 extra AK-47 ammunition, 1 G3 ammunition in his residence at Savelugu. Police also proceeded to the office of the parliamentary candidate of the NDC, Alhaji Idris Yakubu Abdullahi, alias Umbiakpon, which remains part of the Dukuna's house, and retrieved another AK-47 assault rifle with 2 magazines loaded with 60 rounds of ammunition. A search and arrest followed police investigations into the shooting incident at the office of the NDC parliamentary candidate that claimed the life of the young girl and left 3 others wounded on the 8th of December 2020. Police investigations continued, and the intelligence gathered was to the effect that the shooting emanated from the PC office, and an AK-47 rifle was used by jubilant supporters of the party to map party massed up there to celebrate the victory following the recent parliamentary elections. During the search, 1 AK-47 with 2 magazines loaded with 40 rounds of ammunition, 1 G3 ammunition, and a live cartridge were retrieved from the chief's palace. He was arrested, and then about 16:30 hours, after the whole house was searched, police proceeded to the office of the PC, which formed part of the house, but met his absence. He, however, refused to turn up, and after waiting for more than 4 hours at the office, it was subsequently broken into in the presence of journalists in Tamale for a search to be conducted, and then one AK-47 assault rifle with 2 magazines loaded with 60 rounds of ammunition were found under one of the office chairs and was retrieved for information. The important thing here is that AK-47 assault rifles are not for public use. They are for security personnel only, to be used by security personnel. And then when he was called, he mentioned that he had some pink sheets in his room. And so as we speak now, the place is still under lock. And then we are providing security there. The chief of Duku, Na Muhammad Ahmed, was arraigned before court, that is Tamale Magistrate Court, on the 10th December on charge of possessing firearms without license. He was remanded into police custody to reappear on the 17th. That was yesterday. Yesterday, Tamale High Court granted the accused bail in the sum of 100,000 Ghana cedis with 2 sureties to report to the police every Monday and Thursday till the trial commenced. A warrant of arrest for the parliamentary candidate of Savlugu, in whose office the AK-47 rifle was found, had been obtained, and investigation is going on to establish the perpetrators of the crime.
DCOP Ken Nyeboa is the Director General of the Police CID. Away from that, all 30 NDC supporters arrested by the police for demonstrating at the Electoral Commission headquarters have been granted bail. Scores of the supporters were Thursday arrested for taking part in what police described as illegal protest on the streets in front of the Electoral Commission headquarters. The protesters burnt tires, mounted roadblocks and pelted police officers with stones to express their disagreement with the 2020 election results. Lawyer for the protesters, Francis Xavier Sosu, says the party is taking steps to ensure that protesters act within the confines of the law.
We are looking forward to applying for bail for them, particularly the offense being charged being bailable offense. The number of them that sustained various degrees of injuries yesterday as a result of some assault during the arrest. So we are just hoping that the court will be magnanimous and admit them to bail, which is also their constitutional right. Then we can, at appropriate time, inquire into the matter. As a very responsible political party, all steps are being taken to calm our ranks so that if anyone wants to embark on any such action, you can give the police notice in accordance with the Public Order Act, and also encouraging everyone to be very peaceful and protest. Protesting is a constitutional right, but we also understand that those constitutional rights are limited by the Public Order Act, just to make sure that you don't also endanger other people. We understand this position of the law, and we are advising our rank and file to make sure that whatever they do must be within the limits of the law. Everyone can protest if you want to, but let's give police a notice. And also, when you are on a protest, let's ensure that they are peaceful. If you look at the people who are being arraigned before the court today, a lot of them walk into this protest really not knowing that they have been noticed or they have not been noticed. And
okay.
You cannot charge this innocent people, most of them who you can describe as involuntary agents. And you know what? A lot of the guys who were really misbehaving on this protest, trying to bend ties and other things, none of them is here today. These are some of them have been bystanders. Some of them are people who are walking by and who have all been arrested, about 30 of them.
Francis Xavier Sosu, there is Member of Parliament-elect for Medina and also the lawyer for the arrested protesters there. Well, JoyNews is learning that the flag bearer for the NDC, also former President John Dramani Mahama, paid a visit to those who have been, the 30 who have been arrested. These are videos shared with us by Francis Xavier Sosu's team. And that shows the flag bearer of the NDC and former President John Mahama at the police station there, also with the running mates for the 2020 elections, Professor Jainana Pokwajamai there, that what looks like a visit to the police station or the courtroom, apparently. Those are videos that you're seeing on your screen right now. I see someone also like the former Attorney General as well. So these are visuals shared with us by the lawyer for the protesters. Now, the minority NDC, minority in Parliament, is warning of acrimonious relationship with the governing NPP in the 8th Parliament due to be inaugurated next month. Results from the 2020 elections gave the NDC and the NPP both 137 seats each so far, one independent seat. Of course, some of the seats have been contested, but the situation leaves the 8th Parliament without a clear majority. The NDC is now pushing for recollation of results in Techiman South, and it is warning it will be the only way that the NPP side can get their support in next Parliament. We'll hear from the minority leader on this shortly. First, though, head of our political desk, Evan Spencer, with a detailed report as disputes over the Senate West seat was resolved yesterday.
The Senate West parliamentary elections was on a knife's edge till the very end. The election process itself was full of drama. It came down to the contents of one ballot box that was snatched by an assailant who was later caught, prosecuted and jailed. The MPP has used the ballot box snatching as a basis to challenge the election at the High Court, but they lost. At the final count yesterday, the MPP's candidate secured 13,100 votes against the NDC's 13,116 votes. The NDC's candidate, an incumbent MP, Kwame Chumesi Ampofo, won with just 16 votes.
So far as we win, we win. So every win is a win. Despite that the vote is so close, 16 margin, doesn't mean that NDC is going to lose the election next year. We are going to be firm.
The MPP MP for Okre, Dan Boje, who led the party's delegation to monitor the collation of results, had demanded a recollation after it became obvious that the party had lost by the slimmest of margins. But in the end, Mr. Boje said the outcome was fair.
Both different. There's a justification to want to do collation and recollation to satisfy yourself.
You satisfied?
Oh, yes.
With the Senate West parliamentary contest now over, the picture in the next parliament is clearer. The MPP and the NDC will both have 137 seats. There will be one independent MP who has indicated he will vote with the MPP side. Ghana's parliament is, for the first time in the Fourth Republic, hung. No party has a majority. The first battle in this hung parliament is set to play out when the House decides who becomes the next speaker. Both parties will have an equal say. It will come down to the vote of the independent candidate.
Mensa, with that report there, Kwame Chumesi Ampofo is MP-elect for Senate West. Listen.
So far as we win, we win. So every win is a win.
Do you believe that this is an indication that the NDC might or will get this impeachment seat for them to gain a majority in Parliament?
If you go through transparency elections or free and fair elections, NDC is very strong and it's a traditional party in the Senate West. So I don't think NDC will go down. Despite that the vote is so close, 16 margin, doesn't mean that NDC is going to lose the election next year. We are going to beef up and we make sure.
Well, the minority in Parliament now says it believes that it won the Techiman South seat and is demanding recollation before building any compromises with the side of the NPP.
How come that there can be recollation and coalition in Senate West and there cannot be a recollation in Techiman South? So even if you are urging NDC to go to court to question what? when simply they cannot even make available to the NDC an outcome of a declared resource of an election officer. Collate and recollate Techima staff prior to the swearing in of who eventually is declared president of Ghana. Without it, the party will advise itself. I know that compromises will be important. It's early yet, but the MPP know that they lost an election. A ruling government struggling for one seat desperately.
Haruna Idris is the minority leader in Parliament. Now, we're still staying in Parliament because it has passed into law the first ever bill proposed by MPs themselves, not coming from the executive. The Road Traffic Amendment Bill 2020 introduces stiffer punishment for road traffic offenders whose actions lead to the death of an unborn child. This is the first time in history that a private member's bill proposed by MPs has been approved by Parliament. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is joining us to help us understand the context of this. Joseph, it's good to have you. Let's begin with what this means, first of all.
So, Gifty, the new thing that's coming through is that less than an hour ago, Parliament passed the first ever private member's bill, a bill which has actually been proposed by MPs and then it's gotten approval from the House. For a very long time, the only bills that Parliament has actually passed, it has to do with bills that have come to Parliament on behalf of the President and laid by various ministers of state. And it has to do with a provision in Article 108 of the Constitution. It says that before any bill can be introduced in Parliament, that would eventually have implications on the consolidated fund, or for that matter, public funds, as far as the Republic of Ghana is concerned. It can only be approved by Parliament if it has the explicit approval of the President. And so for a very long time, there's been the argument that very senior legal people, as well as the Parliament of Ghana and even various governments have made, that no MP can introduce a private member's bill, because eventually when the bill gets passed into law, then it's something that would cost the state. So all of that still has to be done with the approval of the President, and that has actually avoided some of these situations for several years now. But Professor Michael Quay, who is the current speaker, has repeatedly argued that he is convinced that MPs should have the right, as it happens in several other parliaments across the world, to introduce legislations and get it passed. And sometime earlier this year, the first of said documents was introduced, co-sponsored by Ras Mubarak, who is the MP for Kumbungu, the chairman of Parliament's Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee, that's Ben Abdallah Banda, as well as the minority leader Haruna Idrisu, and the majority leader Osei Mensah Bonsu. And it does an amendment to the Road Traffic Act of 2004. The Road Traffic Act of 2004, which was subsequently amended in 2008, actually make provisions that say when a road user, whether a vehicle user or a cycler, goes ahead to knock down a pedestrian or cause injury to anybody, and the person is a pregnant woman, the only person who can be prosecuted is actually, the offender can be prosecuted, but he can only be prosecuted for the damage that caused to the pregnant woman herself and not the baby in the womb. But with this amendment, which has just passed, apart from any prosecution that may target the damage caused to the pregnant woman, the damage caused to the fetus in the womb as well would also be dealt with, and the offender can go to prison for a minimum term of 3 years and a maximum term of 7 years. It's generated a lot of conversation. The speaker, for example, sees it as landmark and makes the point that it opens room for MPs going forward to make their own proposals and introduce various legislations. Let me get a quick comment on this. The Kumbungu MP, Ras Mubarak, who is actually an outgoing MP, but sponsored this bill jointly with the leaders on both sides, and the Constitutional and Legal Affairs Committee chairman is actually joining us. How remarkable is what Parliament just did? First of all, when it comes to ensuring that the legislature is actually in the business of passing laws that it introduces itself.
Well, it's a landmark legislation. It took a lot of works, to have it passed. And I must use this opportunity to commend the Speaker of Parliament for the opportunity to have this passed. It benefits women up and down the country. pregnant women who, through no fault of theirs, through the recklessness of drivers or riders, would not just be injured but have the fetus in their womb, injured or died. What the law prescribes is some punishment for persons who are driving recklessly or riding recklessly. With current legislation, it made provisions for passengers or pedestrians who got injured as a result of an accident. But this particular one places a burden on drivers to drive carefully, on riders to ride carefully, because if you did not, and out of your recklessness, you knock down a pregnant woman, and it's found out that the fetus in her womb is injured or has died, not only would you be charged for causing injury to the woman, you would be charged for causing injury or death to the fetus in the womb. And this is very remarkable.
What would it mean for the legislative arm going forward in terms of the ability of MPs to introduce bills and get it passed, as has never been seen before in the history of Parliament? It's
broken and shattered the glass ceiling, and the four of us, Speaker, and every other member of Parliament of the 7th Parliament should be proud that we contributed to bringing this about. It opens doors for further closure of loopholes in existing legislations. If you look at the composition of the 8th Parliament, for instance, it provides the 8th Parliament an opportunity to close the loopholes in redundant laws to bring about new legislations. Take, for instance, the issue of party campaign financing. This is something obviously a party in government would not want to bring legislation to Parliament to have it passed.
But an MP can do that based on what we've seen.
Based on what we've seen, an MP can look at any legislation that has loopholes and propose amendments to those loopholes or bring about a completely new legislation.
Many thanks for speaking to us.
Thank you very much.
Ras Mubarak is the Member of Parliament for the Kumbungu constituency. And even as the House concluded the debate on this and got it approved, the Speaker, Professor Maikoku, rightly observed that going forward, the research departments of Parliament should do more in terms of getting more of these legislations out through members of Parliament without it necessarily coming from the executive arm of government. Gifty.
Joseph, I know other things happened in Parliament, but just on the back of the interview you've just done and the story you just told us, does this, by the stretch of our imagination, point to a more collaborative minority, if you like, or a more collaborative NDC MPs with the NPP MPs going forward?
Put that quickly to the Kumbungu MP, Ras Mubarak. He was drawing attention to that it then opens doors for more collaboration. So what does this mean in terms of how MPs, particularly in the 8th Parliament, need to work together? And there is this entire conversation about a parliament that's looking hung and virtually split. With this glass ceiling being broken, as you rightly indicated, what would that mean for the House in terms of cooperation and working together going forward?
Well, it's officially a hung parliament. It is officially a hung parliament, even though we are hoping that we would clash the Techiman South seat to give us a majority in parliament. But obviously, consensus would have to be built, as we have seen in this particular legislation. Obviously, members of the House would have to reach across the aisle to each other and build consensus and build bridges on the most important things for the country. But I think it's going to be a very exciting parliament. But it also takes away the issue of majority gets its way. Currently, with a hung parliament, there's nobody who is majority or minority. We are all equal, 137, as announced by the Electoral Commission.
If the former MP sits with them, as in the NPP, they have that extra.
At any given time, you can't guarantee that all government ministers would be in the House to do government business. Parliament or leadership could decide to schedule a particular date for votes on key things on the floor. but you can't guarantee that somebody would not fall ill. You can't guarantee that a minister would not be stuck outside of the country, as in the case of the Honorable Akotosai, during COVID, who got stuck in the US.
It could happen to both sides.
And could not fly back.
It could happen to both
the country. It could happen to both sides. But the interesting thing is that you're going to have to need a very effective whip in the 8th Parliament to ensure that everybody is there to deliver the votes.
Many thanks for speaking to us. But just to clarify, so there is that admission that if the former MP sit to the MPP side, they will then be able to appoint whoever the majority leader will be and may have the upper hand in terms of getting a speaker, at least until the challenge that's been put to the 5 constituencies the NDC is seeking to challenge is done. Right?
I'm hoping that the various courts would speedily, rule on those cases so that we get to know the numbers before the 7th of January. If it were to happen that way, it would be good not just for our democracy but for our country generally, because the rest of Africa is looking to Ghana for leadership. Never in our history have we had a situation like this, especially under the 1992 Constitution, and this is an opportunity to get things done. We in the NDC are confident that we would form majority. We in the NDC are confident that indeed we would be electing the next speaker of the 8th Parliament.
That's subject to what will happen in the 5 outstanding constituencies. Otherwise, then it will be the MPP side.
That is subject to what will happen in the outstanding 5 constitution. But also we have seen instances where MPs were unavailable during swearing in, but have had to be sworn in at a later date. So we are hoping also that by the 7th of January, a lot of MPs will be out of the country, so we can just get to elect a Speaker of Parliament.
Many thanks for speaking to us, the Kumbungu MP Ras Mubarak there. And Gifty, very interestingly, earlier today, the majority leader, Oseichi Mensah Bonsu, urged members of Parliament to take their security seriously going forward.
Yeah.
He specifically referenced the need for them to enhance security around themselves between now and the 7th of January. And he made the point that currently there are a lot of, to use his words, devilish people around. He cited a situation in his constituency where an individual attacked the brother for supporting him, Mensah Bonsu, and that led to a fatal situation that he said could happen to even members of Parliament between now and the 7th of January. So on the floor, he encouraged MPs to enhance security around themselves. He encouraged MPs to reach out to the security team here in Parliament if they have any difficult situations or peculiar situations, so that then by the 7th of January, everyone will be available for a vote in the House. That's 7th January 2021, as the 8th Parliament begins work.
The presentation of the business statement. I would want to find out from the Honourable Majority Leader if he can be a bit more specific on the COVID-19 testing arrangements that are being put in place. When do you anticipate that you will be ready for honourable members to present themselves for the test? Because that's very, very important. But you fell short of giving us specific dates of when you think that the arrangements will be concluded. And finally, Mr. Speaker, there are major security matters following from the elections. People have been killed. The IGP appeared before us before the elections and took responsibility that he is in charge of the election security task force. Can the task force appear before us to answer questions on matters to do with security, lives that have been lost, and all the security challenges we have faced with the election? It's a very important matter. Either before Tuesday or when we reconvene on the 4th, I think we should create some window for the IGP and members of the task force to appear before this House. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Relating to COVID-19 testing, the details are being worked out. and in the fullness of time, the details will be given to members. Certainly not beyond the 22nd of
Well, you had Okujeto Ablakwa, the member of parliament there. Also, you had the majority leader. They're talking about Ms. Okujeto Ablakwa is talking about security in parliament. Indeed, is considering a request by the minority as we speak for the IGP, James Opon-Boyenu, to be summoned before the House. And then the majority speaker was speaking about COVID-19, which is a bigger conversation we'll be having shortly. Joseph, do I still have you there? Right. So what is the nature of this COVID-19 test? First of all, clear it out for me if there was an agreement for the IGP to show up in Parliament and when.
When Mr. Okujeto Ablakwa made the request, the majority leader, Chimensa Bonsu, said that it's a call in the right direction because, of course, the IGP, James Opon-Boyenu, was the chair of the Election Security Task Force, and then he explained that the leadership of the House will discuss that and come to a conclusion on when exactly, whether it will be sometime before Tuesday when the House will take its break, or when this House resumes on the 4th of January, before it eventually expires on the 6th of January. That decision will be taken and communicated subsequently. The bit about the COVID-19 testing, the majority leader indicated that following the very vigorous nature of the campaigning that had been seen and MPs running around in their constituencies and elsewhere, in order to be sure that they are healthy and all, there will be the rolling out of a testing for all MPs, details of which will be communicated to MPs soon, because then it is still being planned. In fact, the question came from Mr. Ablakwa when the majority leader first announced it as to how soon this will happen and whether it will happen before the Christmas break on 22nd December. And the majority leader said that is being done. And the main objective of that is to ensure that MPs are healthy enough going into the new year, even after the very vigorous campaigning, and how the MPs had come into contact with a lot of people from across the country as far as the electioneering 2020 is concerned.
Certainly, I can tell with the sweat I see on your face that it's been vigorous in the House. Joseph, well, I'm wrapping up right now, but is there anything else you need to bring us up to speed on that happened in Parliament today? Otherwise, that'll be it for me for now.
The majority leader laid out the details of what the House will be doing going into next week before they eventually take their break. Now it's confirmed that the President's final State of the Nation address that he's supposed to deliver to Parliament will come on sometime between the 4th and the 6th of January, right after the Christmas break, before the House eventually gets dissolved. The majority leader did lay out those details and urged MPs to come around even as they take their break next week, Tuesday, and return on the 4th of January. Gifty.
Much very detailed report indeed. Joseph Opoku Gakpo there, he's our man on in Parliament, bringing us up to speed. So a lot is happening in Parliament. But we'll still stay with Parliament. Now, 4-time Member of Parliament for Anglo, Clement Kofi Humado, says it is high time government initiated moves to amend the constitutional provision that requires the President to nominate 50% of his ministers from the House. According to the MP, that provision no longer serves the interest of the country. His comments come on the back of the 2020 parliamentary elections, which nearly resulted in a hung parliament. Ms. Almado spoke to my colleague Enes Menu in a yet-to-be-aired edition of The Exit on the JoyNews channel.
The other day I woke up and I was just thinking, all over the place. And this was one of the things that came to my mind, that, in Parliament, because some of us have been ministers or are ministers, it puts a lot of pressure on our work. Sometimes, to the extent that you can be a minister, when it comes to general elections, they'll throw you out because you didn't have time for your constituents. And I am beginning to feel that we should de-emphasize that a bit. Maybe move the percentage from 50% to, say, 30%, so as to give more time to parliamentarians to work and also to start achieving the separation of powers, And
you're not saying this because you are
no,
leaving
I'm not
the
saying
house,
this because I'm
you're a
leaving the
beneficiary
house.
of the system.
No, I think even among our colleagues, I'm sure that kind of thinking. And also the civil society. They say sometimes that why don't we, look, in countries like Sierra Leone, there is no provision for members of parliament to become ministers. In Liberia, the same thing. In Nigeria, it's the same thing. It's only in Ghana that we seem to be the odd country out, you know. So that kind of thinking is coming. It's not because I'm no more there. I'm thinking about what is best for the country. And in addition to that,
yes,
the issue of election of DCEs, I think we need to bring it back so as to reduce the pressure on MPs.
Members of Parliament.
The kind of pressure we go through is not easy. But I think that it should be brought back and there should be consensus on this. And DCEs need to be elected. They need to be more accountable to their people. The state of the assemblies right now, look, there's a lot which could be done better.
Clement Kofi Humado there. That interview will air later here on the JoyNews channel. My name is Gifty Andropia. This is The Pulse. I want to take a very quick break. When we return, we'll talk about a bit more about COVID-19. There are fears that even if the vaccinations are rolled out, it will be difficult for African countries to deal with it. We'll bring you details as the Ghana Medical Association brings in their own warning about the rising cases of COVID-19 in Ghana. Welcome back to the show. Many thanks for staying with us. Now, the WHO says it is concerned about the preparedness of many African countries to conduct a successful COVID-19 vaccination once a vaccine is made available for Africa next year. Lack of logistics and supply chain systems in many African countries could delay the distribution of vaccines to some countries. As the WHO says, average preparedness for the continent is disappointingly at 36%, as against the 80% required. Dr. Richard Mihigo is WHO's Program Area Manager, Immunization and Vaccine Development, and has been addressing a news conference.
The key areas that are currently needed some attention are mainly the logistics and supply chain, and here specifically the need to review the vaccine distribution strategy, mapping the points of storage, and additional backup storage facilities. As we know, we might not have enough capacity to store all the vaccine, and this should include the private sector, such as the food and beverage industry, to improve vaccine safety, to identify any adverse events following immunization, to improve demand generation, including ensuring that we listen to community concerns via social media and other platforms, while managing rumors. Community have played, as we know, an incredibly important and central role in stopping the spread of COVID-19, and they will be central to the rollout of vaccine against COVID-19. So it's critical that authorities reach out to communities to listen to their concern and give people a voice in the process of developing and implementing delivery strategies. It is also critical to fight anti-vaccine information. Some of the vaccine that have received, or for which we have seen some efficacy data, will require ultra-cold requirement, or minus 70 or 80 degrees. But even if it is a stable vaccine that could be stored at the regular temperature with normal cold chain condition, we need to work on the readiness to execute delivery strategy effectively. This will be, without any doubt, the biggest vaccination campaign in our history. So the planning and resources made available need to reflect the scale and the scope of this mammoth task. Prioritization is a key component of the delivery strategy, and we can learn from approaches in countries where vaccination is underway. Countries like Canada, the UK, or even the US are mainly targeting frontline health workers. So we are working really with the African countries to prepare for the regulatory approvals for the vaccine, as well as defining delivery strategies and the needed infrastructure, determining priority groups, identifying source of financing, and advocating globally for the equitable distribution of vaccine supply. So I'll be happy in collaboration with my colleagues to respond to any question that may arise during this conversation. Thank you, Dr. Tuwebwe.
Thank you.
As a WHO press conference, now the WHO also plans to roll out its biggest immunization campaign yet, distributing more than 2 billion vaccines to African countries by the end of 2021.
Many countries in our continent are continuing to report on their progress using the Vaccine Introduction Readiness Assessment Tool, or what we call familiarly VIRAT, which is a tool that has been developed by WHO and UNICEF, and more recently merged with the information from the World Bank. And so far, 45 countries on the African continent have reported some data in that readiness tool. And the average readiness across the region is unfortunately only at 36%. This is really far below the desired benchmark of 80% to conduct a successful and efficient vaccination drive.
Well, here in Ghana, cases continue to rise. More worrying is the death rate. In the last 3 days of the COVID-19 reporting, the Ghana Health Service says 2 persons died on each of 12th, 13th and 14th of December this year. The country's case count has now passed 53,000 after 62 new cases on December 14 were recorded. Yesterday, Health Minister Kwekwa Menu, who was at the launch of the 72nd New Year's coup, touted government's handling of the pandemic ahead of the discussions by the experts and academia. Listen.
My excitement comes from the fact that this year's theme is very timely because of the worldwide experience of the COVID-19 pandemic. The annual New Year's coup and conference has always identified topical issues of national and international interest. And the selection of the theme, Building Ghana in the Face of Global Health Crisis, is no exception. I congratulate you for aptly selecting such a theme for the 2020 event. I am very grateful to the individuals and institutions who responded to the government's appeal for donations into the COVID-19 National Trust Fund. I want to believe that as members of the New Year's coup with varied expertise, we all have an obligation to every Ghanaian and to their families, not only to get this disease under control, but also to build a better future for ourselves and our families. Although we have done well in managing the pandemic, I strongly believe there is still more to do to win the fight against this pandemic. It is essential to remember that we are in this together and we can only get out of this together.
Health Minister there speaking about coronavirus. Now, the Ghana Medical Association is on a public education drive to get people to understand the threat of a second wave. The medical professionals who are at the center of the pandemic want strict adherence to COVID-19 protocols.
Our dear politicians and political parties, we do understand the times in which we live now. The need for you to disseminate your message to the masses cannot be overemphasized. But if we have learned nothing from COVID at all, it has taught us that we should be able to think outside the box. We should be able to use unconventional means to achieve the same thing.
Did you know that the number of COVID-19 cases in Ghana is going up gradually? This is largely because of the relaxation in the COVID-19 preventive protocols. The Ghana Medical Association is calling on all Ghanaians to observe the necessary preventive measures. Let's wear our face masks when we have to do that. Let's observe the necessary social and physical distances. And above all, let's observe the necessary hand hygiene. Be responsible and keep safe. Thank you.
320 deaths so far due to COVID-19. 48,055 confirmed cases at present. Over 500 active cases confirmed. Many more have not reported for diagnosis, and they live among us, in our homes, our churches, our restaurants, our offices. Would you help prevent this second wave, as many countries in Europe are experiencing second waves? Let's stick to the COVID-19 prevention protocols. Observe strict hand hygiene, wear your face mask, observe social distancing.
Keep your distance. Physical distance is still a must if we must avoid a second wave of COVID-19. Think twice before you join a crowd. Is there enough space for adequate social distancing? Before you speak to anyone, take 3 steps back. They can still hear you. Let's all come together to avoid a second wave of COVID-19.
But I've been infected already. Can I get infected again? If I get infected, would I infect others? Wow, there's a lot we are learning about reinfections. But yes, data suggests that reinfections are possible. Therefore, to err on the side of caution, let's continue to wear our mask, especially in public places. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water, avoid crowded areas, and ensure social or physical distancing. Let's help prevent a second wave.
We have seen the impact of COVID-19 on various sectors of our lives. The hard decisions on restriction of movements. It is difficult to predict the outcome of a second wave. Let's all come together, wear our face masks, observe the protocols, hand hygiene, and social distancing. Let's prevent a second wave.
So let's take care of ourselves. And as we do, as the UK embarks on vaccination of the COVID-19 pandemic, Dorothy Asante, a healthcare assistant in the UK, has been lucky to have had the first shot of the vaccination process. According to her, it's a simple process that is not frightening. She says people must avail themselves to be vaccinated whenever the opportunity presents itself. Dorothy Asante spoke earlier in an interview with Benis Abubedulansa on Newsdesk.
At first, it was scary, but I think one of my friends who was put to the testing earlier suggested to me that if that person has survived, then we can also survive. So she encouraged me. She went to have it first last week, and then yesterday I had it. And it's okay. It's just like a normal flu vaccine, which you don't have any pain. From yesterday, I haven't had any pain. I just have paracetamol, and then I'm fine and back to work. Before I had my vaccine yesterday, I took paracetamol a night before, and then yesterday, before I went to have the vaccine, I took another paracetamol, and I'm fine. I'm very, very fine. I haven't had any reaction at all. Apparently, we are going to have 2 dose. Okay. So I just took one, and I think after 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, I'll go back and have another dose, which is the final dose to clear you from the COVID.
This is still The Pulse with me, Gifty and Opia. We've been talking about what's happening in Parliament. We've also talked about COVID-19 and the WHO's concerns that African countries don't seem ready for a rollout of a vaccination process. We'll be right back. Do stay with us. Welcome back to the show. Now, the upsurge of potholes on roads in Ghana is a worrying concern as newly constructed roads degenerate after pressure over a short period. Scientists at the Building Road Research Institute, BRI, or the CSIR, say good maintenance culture is the way forward to a sustainable road system. Emmanuel Osei filed this report.
In Ghana often deteriorates long before their lifespan. The poor maintenance culture has been identified as a contributory factor to the quick splint of roads constructed. A principal research scientist at Building and Road Research Institute, Professor Francis Afuka, says sustainable road maintenance systems need to be instituted to help save the roads and lives.
As soon as roads are open to traffic, they are subjected to serious stresses due to heavy loading coming from articulated trucks. And so every road that is being developed should have a maintenance plan, and that should start from day one. This should be done in such a way that as soon as cracks and minor potholes start developing, these things are then quickly patched, because if they are not patched and then water seeps into the base of the road, then serious potholes are developed over time. But you know the situation in Ghana where we brag ourselves as people without any maintenance culture. That has been the bane.
The maintenance of most roads in Kumasi and its environs has been low. A shabbily constructed road is bound to deplete over a short period.
The killer potholes here in Aloga Junction in the Tech Edum Highway in Kumasi has been fixed, but the state of the road is still not the best. Concerns have been raised on how this can cause accidents and create chaos on our streets.
According to Professor Afuka, community-led patching of roads should not be entertained, as the practice can lead to further depletion.
We've got to understand the pothole patching technology. Normally, you have to remove the loose materials from it, cut it to shape, and then you compact any fresh material that you bring it on it. But here we see the local people or the residents bringing in material from outside. They don't even ram it or they don't compact it. So when vehicles come on it, it becomes, it loosens up and it becomes worse. Because the whole thing is to prevent water from getting into the base of the road. And once they don't do it, the material that comes on it, gets soaked up, and then water continues to seep into the existing thing, and so the whole thing worsens.
Reporting for JoyNews, Emmanuel Osei, Kumasi.
And there are lingering questions as to whether or not the people in the yet-to-be-created Guan constituency in the Oti region will have representation in the 8th Parliament. On 6th of December, a day before election, the Electoral Commission released a statement noting that the citizens within that enclave will vote only in the presidential election pending the creation of a new constituency for them. Weeks after the election, the Electoral Commission has yet to come out with modalities that spells out how the people in that constituency will be represented in Parliament. Now take a look at that statement right there on your screen, and I'll take you through it. It says the Commission wishes to announce for the information of the general public, especially voters in the Buem constituency, that the 7th December 2020 presidential and parliamentary elections will take place in the Buem constituency as scheduled from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. However, as a result of the creation of the Guan District Local Government Assembly, established with Instrument 2020, and pending the creation of the Guan constituency, eligible voters in the Guan district will vote only in the presidential election, but not in the parliamentary election in the Buem constituency. And voters in the Guan district are to take note of this directive from the Electoral Commission. So that is a statement that was sent in earlier. That is on the 6th of December, before the elections actually happened. While the NDC and the MPP have all been speaking to this issue. According to a member of the NDC legal team, Godwin Eduji Tamaklu, the Electoral Commission must create the new constituency, must either create a new constituency or allow them to vote to be part of the existing constituency.
Mission must have the Guan constituency in place and the people voting before we can even go ahead to have a speaker and even the swearing in. Because remember that it is the speaker that conveys the parliamentary proceedings where the president is sworn in. Until we have the Guan, we should not go ahead with the selection or election of a speaker of parliament, because doing so will greatly undermine the rights of representation. The SAP, whatever it is that is legally permissible, must be done. So we can have an election in the Guan constituency before the 7th day of January. We knew that the opportunity would be given to the people there to have voted in Hohoe, only for that last-minute letter from the Electoral Commission chaired by Jane Mensah, asking the people to only vote presidential in Boem and not parliamentary. So that letter, I don't know whether it was mischievously done, a date, and it was a Sunday. Monday we were voting. So legally you could not approach any court for redress. I mean,
Ediji Tamaklo is a member of the NDC legal team. Meanwhile, Director of Communications of the New Patriotic Party in the OT region, Seydou Musa, believes that the Electoral Commission understands the issue better and must be allowed the room to deal with it.
A lot of engagements with the stakeholders that matter as far as the Central Kofi Lipe Akpafu Lolobi area is concerned. A lot of consensus has been built, the district has been created, and we are looking forward for the creation of the constituency so that the various political parties may put up their candidates for a possible by-election in that constituency. What we are looking forward from the Electoral Commission is to apply the relevant rules and regulations and the laws that establishes constituencies. And I think when that is done and properly laid, we as political parties are one of the major stakeholders in the creation of that constituency. Yeah, what we are law-abiding citizens, and I believe that mandate is with the Electoral Commission. The Electoral Commission is made up of experts in their own field. They understand what the law says about creation of the constituency and, for that matter, the representation of the people. And we believe that they are going to do just what the dictates of the constitution of this country says.
Now, the National House of Chiefs says the numerous demonstrations against election results have the potential of eroding the country's democratic gains. This comes after a series of protests by the National Democratic Congress across the country. They're contesting the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. President of the House, Ojiahoho Yaojebi II, noted the ongoing protests have heightened tension in the country. Nanaya Ojima had an exclusive interview with the President of the House following the statement and has filed this report.
The House of Chiefs, in a statement, acknowledged the smooth running of the 2020 general elections, emphasizing the country continues to mature in democracy. Though the House describes the process as smooth, it will not disregard the objections raised by the NDC. Ojiahoho Yaojebi is entreating persons dissatisfied with the election results to seek redress by using laid-down processes and procedure rather than street protests.
Elections all over the world have never been perfect. But then we live in a world of compromises. So we are asking them to compromise and then especially speak to their followers and calm down on the demonstrations and in some cases destruction of property.
Do you think that there is heightened tension in the country?
Otherwise, we will not issue this statement. Because if some people are aggrieved and they are not shouting for nothing, they know what probably they have seen. So we are approaching them to speak to them to calm down.
The House says efforts are in place to liaise with stakeholders in the election to find means to end the impasse.
The end of the statement was that, quite apart from the advice this House has given to them, we are also working with other stakeholders and, if possible, to meet the leadership of the political parties and find common ground for understanding and for calm to prevail in the country.
For JoyNews, Nanaya Ojima reporting.
The veterinary office at the Old Tafo Municipal Assembly in the Ashanti region has launched an anti-rabies campaign to provide vaccines for animals. Although the area is yet to officially record any case of rabies, the public awareness on the vaccination has become necessary with the increased number of dogs and other pets there. Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin reports.
A particular chemistry exists between humans and dogs. Dogs are not only companions, they also ensure the safety of their owners. Despite the connection between humans and dogs, there is always the risk of people contracting rabies.
Yeah, he's my girlfriend, the dog bite his son.
but they didn't take care of it. So from 6 to 4 months ago, they just started biting like a dog. So when they took to hospital, it was too late. So my friend's son died. It's like 6 or 4 months ago. That's why I'm asking all my friends to bring the doctor for them, for him to take care of the dog for them.
So it is an animal. Anything can happen. You can't advise it. The only thing is to bring your dogs or your pets to the veterinary so that they will know how best they can treat it.
Why someone, the person first reports to the nearest hospital. When the person reports to the nearest hospital, the doctor will request for the vaccination folio. That is proof of vaccination, whether the dog has been vaccinated or not. If the dog has been vaccinated, whether the dog has been vaccinated or not, the doctor will refer the case to the veterinary service. So there will be, the veterinary service will embark on 10 days investigation. The dog will be quarantined and observed for a period of 2 weeks. If the dog is not rabies positive or is not showing any signs of rabies, the person is free to go. But if the person is showing signs of rabies, the post-exposure prophylaxis needs to be administered to the person who was bitten by the dog.
According to the World Health Organization, 40% of people who contract rabies are younger than 15 years. It is much less expensive to prevent rabies than to treat it.
I haven't come to my notice yet whether there is a human case of rabies. But we are doing this exercise to prevent dogs from contracting the rabies virus in the municipality.
Rabies is 100% preventable, but also 100% fatal once clinical symptoms appear. Rabies is virtually 100% fatal. The disease affects both domestic and wild animals and is spread to people generally through saliva, bites, and scratches. Early symptoms include fever, pain, or unusual tingling sensation around the wound. Thorough cleansing of the wound and immunization within a few hours after a bite can prevent the onset of the disease. In the next 2 weeks, veterinary officers at the Old Tafo municipality will be vaccinating dogs and cats in the area. They are also taking records of dogs and making sure they are properly examined.
When they came, we first asked them whether the dog have bitten someone in the past 1 month. Any case that comes, we first investigate. That's the reason why we took the history. It's part of the history that I was talking about. We first ask the person whether the dog have bitten someone in the past month. If the dog have bitten someone, we need to investigate to know that the dog is free from rabies before we can administer the vaccine. If it's within the specified period, as I said, we can administer the vaccine. But if the dog bite it's not within the period I'm talking about, we cannot administer the vaccine.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Now, the Yuletide every year comes with a lot of excitement as people make plans to stock up their fridges and storehouses with foodstuff. But when the prices of foodstuff are rising, many get worried. It's a few days to Christmas and many wares from corn to eggs are becoming a little more expensive. Judith Awachi at Tando has more in this report.
So we've been speaking to some local traders at the Malata Market Center. And according to them, there has been an increment in the prices of their goods. And so we'll be speaking to some of these market women to understand what they think is the cause of this increment, as well as how badly it has affected their businesses.
Traders at the Malata market say that prices of goods have increased as a result of duties, climate changes, and the COVID-19 pandemic. Some have also attributed the hike to the Christmas season, saying such hikes are normal during these times. According to them, this has affected their businesses as customers are unwilling to buy their goods.
Truly, prices have increased. Maize used to be sold at 250 Ghana cedis a bag, but now it's being sold at 300 Ghana cedis. For the foreign goods, I will attribute the price hike to export duties. The price hike for farm goods, however, can be attributed to the climate change.
The prices have really increased. The fishes we sell here are all from Ivory Coast, and due to that, the export duties are very high. It has really affected my business.
Affecting business price they are quite high. Normal because
the prices have increased, but it is normal due to the festive season. These are going for 10 and 11 cedis, and the small ones are being sold at 8 cedis. But during this season, we can get this for 8 cedis.
Every time the season, to get September, they turn 10, which means to say 8 cedis.
At first, it used to be sold at 60, with the highest being 19 cedis. But now it's going for 22, 23, or 26 cedis.
Contrary to the popular views, a local plantain seller at the market says her prices have rather gone low. She explains that the prices of plantain are usually low during the Christmas season. For her, business is booming.
Oh,
by God's grace, the price of plantains have not increased. This was also the case last year. For about 6 years, the cost of plantain was high until the past 4 years. Business for me is going well.
Judith Awachitando's report for JoyNews.
And I'm sure you're up to, gathering your own foodstuff. Well, let me tell you about toy guns, plus water pistols, dolls, and race cars. They used to be among the fancy items featuring high on the shopping list of parents ahead of Christmas, and they still are. Now, toys are popular during the festive season and are referred to as must-have toys. They give comfort to people of all ages to enjoy the Yuletide. In this report, Mona Lisa Frimpong observes how traders in Kumasi are cashing in on demand for these toys.
The must-have toys have flooded the markets ahead of Christmas. Parents are busy buying at various toy stands in the central business district of Kumasi. Obaya Foriwa is a trader at the KTTR market. She says the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the importation of the Christmas toys, but sales have been good. Children are known to be fascinated by the colorful blinks of the toys. Surprisingly, older folks are gradually showing interest in these remote-controlled toys. It has become a hobby for fun and relaxation. Linda Prempe, a parent, tells of the thrill it brings her 22-year-old daughter and 18-year-old son.
Some back 20 years, them man 22 years. O fiance or penini wala bofando, o banu so years. We pila timid fish kwani ball kwana sem shimichira o mo se city say ya. Ball mi nchim ma won. Na mi chim ni say ya. Wo mutimi atwa mi ye ni say na me de tran kwa ni say. Wo mani timi ji sa na o mabusa mi say. Many to me, Mr. No Mabusam said, Edian and Ayasa. No matter how much I would say, no me as well. It won't to Mr. Sanadia and Nana and Son and I.
Akosia Apia and her 11-year-old daughter sell toys at the Osu Central Market. She expresses delight at the sales recorded before and after the elections. She is hopeful there will be a boom in sales in the next few days to Christmas. Many traders have switched from selling their usual wares. This, they say, is the most lucrative season to sell the must-have toys. Mona Lisa Frimpon reporting.
Isn't that a pretty doll there? Let me take a break here for sport. Hans Mensah Andor has that for you.
Thanks for staying with us on The Pulse. It's now time to bring you sports. My name is Hans Mensah Andor, and the trending story locally is the sacking of Maxwell Kunedu as head coach of Kumasi Asante Kotoko. That has come after they lost by a goal to nil against Accra Great Olympics at the Accra Sports Stadium in the Ghana Premier League. And assistant coach Johnson Smith is the man taking charge on an interim basis. Well, a few names have come up as a replacement for Maxwell Kunedu. Who are these men? We take a look at them. On your screen, Ignatius Osei-Fosu is the head coach of Techima 11 Wonders. Former Black Stars coach James Kwesi-Appiah is one of the men whose name has come up. Coach Anna Walker is the man who masterminded Asante Kotoko's defeat in the Ghana Premier League and is the head coach of Accra Great Olympics. And Ibrahim Tanko is a former Ghana international and also a coach. Joining me in the studio is Seydou Adamu, who is a sports journalist, to run the rule over these four gentlemen and gauge their suitability or the likelihood that they will be replacing Maxwell Kunedu as head coach of Kumasi Asante Kotoko. Thank you very much for joining me, Seydou.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And first of all, let's talk about this development. My first reaction was that, well, this is typical of Kumasi Asante Kotoko. This, you could almost predict it.
Yes, obviously. Looking at it, how Kotoko went through pre-season, looking at how Nania Ponsa and his management set up, clearly you could see that they didn't manage the expectation of the fans. Therefore, once they had put the fans into a situation where they wanted instant results, someone would have to be sacrificed in a situation where results isn't coming. Because this is Kotoko's fifth match of the season. Yeah. They have only one win. They have 3 drawn matches and 1 loss. And this is also the most critical aspect of period of Kotoko's season.
Okay.
Because they would have to win matches to cross the year.
Okay.
They would have to also be able to qualify to the CAF Champions League group stage, which is very critical. And that's about 5 days from now. Yes. Yesterday I spoke to Maxwell Kunedu and asked him, because he called for time.
Okay.
So I asked him whether the time includes the CAF Champions League qualifiers against Al Hilal. He couldn't answer. And if you have checked Kotoko's performance, there are 2 things involved in football. It's either you play well and don't get the results, or you are playing bad. And Kotoko is playing very bad. Very badly, very, very badly. And no management will want to entertain that.
Absolutely.
And so, like I said, in an institution as big as Kotoko, if issues come up, someone must be sacrificed. And if you take into consideration the calls from the fans yesterday, there was no way this management was going to look on without taking action. Maxwell
Kunedu's head on the chopping block. Let's take a look at the 4 names that we've penciled down and go through them quickly. So there's the youngest coach, Ignatius Osei-Fosu, the youngest coach in the Ghana Premier League. We've seen his performance so far in the Ghana Premier League. His side play, breathtaking football, and very often combine it with the right result as well.
Yeah. So personally, I don't think he's ready to take on Kotoko at this time.
Why?
Why? Because at this time you need someone with, huge, someone who can take bold decisions.
Okay.
Especially in a situation where you have 2 political wings. Kotoko's playing body is now a political setup. Kotoko's management is a political setup. You need somebody who can bridge that gap. And I don't think Ignatius Osei-Fosu has that tenacity, has that wherewithal to take that position.
So we cross him out?
Yes, I cross him out. He's made comments that suggest he wants to take that job, but clearly not this time.
James Kwesi Appiah, I mean, obviously we cannot doubt his experience.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, he's handled the national teams at various levels.
Yeah.
But if there is one thing that would prevent him becoming Kotoko coach, what would it be? Well,
I'm yet to figure out what would prevent or what can stop Kwesi Appiah from becoming the Blaster. Kumasi Saniko's coach. Well, he's seen it all. Okay. He's played Kotoko at the highest level. He's won trophies with them. He's coached them at a point in time in 1996 when he took over after the exit of former Wafa coach Samadi. So he's been there before. He knows how it is. He's played his captain Kotoko before. He's coached to the highest level. He's coached the Blasters to the World Cup. He's gone to Sudan to coach one of their biggest clubs. And so if there's anything to pick out, I think he's one of the coaches that can have become the replacement.
Real quick, Anna Walker, I mean, we saw his exploit before COVID. He was saved, his club, rather was saved by COVID. They come back and they seem to be doing very well. Exactly. His comment after the game to the effect that for a team that is playing in Africa, they should be playing better against Accra Great Olympics.
Exactly.
Can he do a job for Kumasi Asante Kotoko?
Well, for his exploits, for his experience, and at least we can say that for two clubs. For Nani FC in 2011 when he won the CAF, he won the Ghana FA Cup with them. Then also when he prepared Bekum Chelsea to win the 2011-2012 Ghana Premier League. Okay. In fact, he virtually did everything in that 2011 Bekum Chelsea team. He did a setup. He in collaboration with the then management chairman of the club, Mr. Chairman, brought in the players that they felt had that quality to play Bekum Chelsea, and also had that quality to break that Ghana Premier League duopoly that had been built between Kumasi and which was broken by Bekum Ediana Stars in 2009-2010. So he has that temperament to do this job at this stage. And
the final name on the list, Ibrahim Tanko, played for Borussia Dortmund, also played for the Black Stars of Ghana. Huge experience locally. But we are talking about Kumasi Asante Kotoko here. Yes. If the job is offered to him, should he take it?
Tanko is a very good coach, I know. Very, very good coach. He's also coached one of the most difficult national teams in Africa. I mean, Cameroon, being the assistant coach at a turbulent period. So that alone speaks volumes of what he can do. But for a politically motivated club like Kumasi Asante Kotoko, Kotoko is a political setup. Of course. And I wrote that when there's a shipwreck and for such an institution, someone must definitely be sacrificed. Absolutely. So for such a coach who is not that tough-talking, you need a tough-talking coach to pick Kumasi.
So he's also out.
He's not a tough-talking coach.
So Ignatius, you cancel out. Ibrahim Tanko also out, leaving Kwesi Appiah and Anna Walker. You think that those two men are the men capable of doing the job for Kumasi Asante?
For Kwesi Appiah, not because he's tough-talking, but because he has a certain constituency in Kotoko. You need to have a constituency in Kotoko.
Ex-player, he's won things with the former Black Stars coach. That respect is going.
That respect is there, and that can guarantee him.
Interesting. We'll expand the conversation later at 10:30 p.m. on Fan Zone. Do all to join us. Thank you very much, Chief Seydou Adamu. My name is Hans Mensah, and that's your sport.
Well, can you believe that next week is Christmas already? I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas ahead of that. And that'll be it for me. For now, there's more news at myjoyonline.com. My name is Gifty Ando Appiah. It's always a pleasure having you be my guest.